When I walk in, every ancestor move. Every cell in my body got an ancient groove. I ain't searching for truth, I embody the proof. You look at me, you see the lineage. Every obstacle shift when I rise in them.
Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome back to another round of my Patriot Report Live. I'm the bridge connecting next generation to federal contractor. I am Ratwan Hill, and with me I have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ambassador of Peace. And if you don't know who he is by now, you might want to ask ChatGPT, Mr. Walter Cotton III. Mr. Cotton, how you doing today, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I noticed that the Senate took another stab at trying to pass a war powers resolution. So they say nothing beats a champion like a trier. So eventually they'll get their feces amalgamated and do the right thing. I haven't heard of any of our troops being injured or much less killed over the last 24, 48 hours. And so right now I'm optimistic that our efforts to cause Congress to engage on our behalf are going to be successful.
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. Now, to my understanding, the vote was just short by one. It was short by one vote. Now, it's been the last couple of votes has been short by like one vote, two votes. It seemed like a tease or like a game. What could you explain to me? How does that process actually work? So when they had the last vote to this vote, what do they have, a conversation, a conference meeting? Then somebody mind change, and then they make a decision based off of how does that work?
It depending on which camp you talk to, some people will tell you that, these actions and votes are by design and, behind the scenes, they're trying to control a centralized and agreed upon narrative. In point of fact, what we have within our elected officials is a body politic that's out of control, right? It's lost its mooring, it's lost its connection to we the people. And if that Supreme Court decision that was motivated by the executive branch on the voters' rights issue in Louisiana is an indication of it, I haven't seen one. And so, what we have now is a body politic that's out of control and needs to get a reassurance from the people who they work for. They need to get a reassurance from the people that we have the mechanism to reach out and touch them where they can feel it. And in this particular instance, it's in the ballot box. And so the experiment, right? I'm one that's a big believer in proof of concept. The experiment that we're trying to demonstrate to them, this is a telegraph, right? This isn't something that we're going to sneak up on you with. We're telling you in no uncertain terms, if your voting record doesn't demonstrate a patriotic bent, you're going to have a challenge during this midterm election, or you're going to have a challenge during the general election. And so if you're a elected official or you're the staff member of an elected official or within the sound of my voice, I encourage you aggressively to take us up at our word. I encourage you aggressively to become a co-sponsor of the bills that we are asking you to co-sponsor. I encourage you aggressively to tell your member that he or her need to do the right thing with regard to our men and women that are in harm's way. Not to do so would be a fool's errand.
Yes, sir. Now, when you mentioned about the voting rights and us making something happen during voting and with the redistricting going on, how does that play in part of our voting power? Like, does it have a more positive, negative effect in regards to people, or is that going to be more of a partisan swing?
Yeah, it's a partisan issue, right? It's Republican versus Democrat, right? At the end of the day, the decision that the Supreme Court made did not take away our right to vote. It did not take away any individual's right to vote, right? What it did was played some shenanigans in terms of, party and partisanism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like in that movie Roots, I saw this scene where they were talking about, freeing the slaves, and this one, farm owner or sharecropper owner said to the other slave owner, we put a fence up around them, they're carrots, right? And it's one thing about that old Brer Rabbit, right? If you put a fence up, they're just going to find another way in to get the carrots. And so in this particular instance or situation, we, the people, the voters of, these United States, need to find another way to get an equitable demonstration of the intention and will of the people. And we can do that in multiple ways, right? We can go back in and change the rules that they have put in place to create these redistricting capabilities once and for all, right? But for right now, what we need to do is we need to send a clear signal to our elected officials that they have one foundational general order. And that foundational general order is to do the patriotic thing. That's the foundational general order, not to do the partisan thing, right? Not to do the ethnic thing, not to do the gender thing. But if you're sitting in one of the seats that are afforded to you by the electorate of these United States of America, it's incumbent upon you to do the patriotic thing, do the utilitarian thing with your vote. And in this particular instance, any vote that's against the Constitution is against the people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, my question, what I thought of is, okay, so if we essentially didn't lose our voting rights, we didn't, we still can vote. Why are people in such an uproar if we still have the bill? Like, we still have the ability to vote. They just changed the redistricting of parties, but we still have the power to do what we need to do. Why is it such an uproar?
Because it's by design, right? It was conditioned into the process, right? Right versus left. You took our votes, they took our jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's built into the process. So they ring the bell, and the conditioned people act as they're supposed to, right? The right puts their fisticuffs up, the left put their fisticuffs up, and all of a sudden we have a melee in the street, right? But independent thinkers, right, see these shenanigans, right? They recognize that, wait a second, I'm not a part of that decision that you're making there. I have the ability to make independent thoughts. I make independent choices, and they break away, right? And they make those independent choices and decisions, and they control the system. Mm-hmm. That's where we're at right now. The powers that be think they've got the American populace controlled. They think they've got them hoodwinked. They think they've got them bamboozled, run amok. But what they didn't, expect was for the narrative on social media to undermine their plan, right? They didn't expect for people to educate themselves to, what their rights are, under the Constitution, right? What their rights are under this civic system, and, find a mechanism or a voice like mine to come forward and say, hey, wait a second, right? We're in control of this process, right? We have the ability to influence you, and we don't have to wait until the midterm election. We can influence you right now by picking up the phone and contacting you and letting you know what needs to be done.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, I wanted to discuss in regards to something I heard you mention early on when you were saying that, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that voting during the midterms is under 50% from the is that correct? Like under 50% of the people who can vote during midterm don't vote. Is it exclusively, was that data point just exclusively for midterms, or is it just talking about during election cycles in general?
Well, my last conversation with Claude indicated that during the general election, right, we get a higher turnout. But for whatever reason, and it may be because only a portion of the Congress is up for reelection during midterms, we get a lesser percentage to turn out, and unfortunately, that percentage on average is less than 50% of the voting population turns out to participate in the midterm. And so that's problematic, right? Because that apathy only divides, or should I say, it weakens one side or the other, depending on the kind of community you have in your voting map, right? But that's the challenge. The challenge is during the midterm election, fewer voting age members turn out, and we need to change that.
Yes, sir. So during this time period, like during the You Are Here point in this season that we're going through right now, it's probably even more essential that we increase that voting number during this particular midterm year, given the shenanigans that we got going on right now.
It is absolutely critical that we over-index in this midterm election, right? Because we have abdicated our responsibility to kick the bums out, right? We expected the administrations to come in and drain the swamp, right? And each successive administration has not come in and drained the swamp, right? They've come in and stuck a freaking straw in the swamp and started sucking from it, right? So it's our opportunity during this particular midterm to over-index for the express purpose of ensuring that the go-forward members of Congress are all true patriots. First, are all true patriots, not loyal to any cult of personality, not loyal to any policy, but loyal to these United States of America and the things that make these United States of America safe again, right? That is the hyper focus for this midterm election, and we're raising the stakes, right? So the candidates that are out in your district that are spewing the same old pablum, this is our opportunity to hold them accountable and give them a litmus test and say, hey, where were you at on the Iraq war? I'm not Iraq war, but where are you at on the Iran incursion, right? Where were you at on this illegal action by this administration to circumvent the Constitution, right? If you were not supporting, right, the people's will that this administration adhere to the Constitution, if you don't believe that the administration not reporting to Congress in 60 days, if you believe that the administration not reporting to Congress in the 48-hour period that was required by that act was wrong, then you may not be the right person for the job, because that's a violation of the Constitution, right? That's a breaking of the laws. And if we are nothing, we're a nation of laws, right? Predicated on the rule of law. If we let the highest offices violate it, we cannot expect the citizens to do anything less.
So it's essential that we do our part, because if we don't do our part, then it pretty much silences acquiescence, and we're pretty much saying that they could do whatever they want because we're not speaking up for ourselves.
Absolutely. And I don't know where this idea came from in America, right? Somebody has got you all hoodwinked, bamboozled. I mean, you're like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz with the ruby red slippers on, right? You've always had the power. All you got to do is click your heels together. NEM, I want to go home. And this shit show stops. For whatever reason, the average American doesn't recognize that when you come together in a voting block in this democratic system, it produces the representative that is going to discharge our interest. And now we have a group of representatives that are proving feckless. They're proving captured. I don't know any other way to say it. And so now, as a true patriot, right, as a red-blooded patriot, we're putting out a call to action to all of the other red-blooded patriots that say, I don't like the way America is being represented on a world stage by this kind of imagery, right? I don't like the fact that we are blowing up hundreds of billions of dollars worth of real resources and money when my fellow American, my neighbors don't have health care. My neighbors are experiencing food insecurity. We're uncomfortable with the idea of supporting actions on a geopolitical stage that make America less safe. We're uncomfortable with supporting actions on a geopolitical stage that make other nations suffer. Right? We have a problem with that, and what we want to do, right? Us true patriots, we want to get together and we want to make sure that we're represented in all of our congressional offices, as well as within our judiciary and the executive branch, by people who hold these truths to be self-evident, that all Americans were created equal.
Yes, sir. Now, before I segue, do you believe that, from your perspective, do you think veterans are best positioned to demonstrate our powers because we already made this sacrifice to the nation and we have one of the largest voting blocks in North America? Do you think that veterans are perfectly positioned to demonstrate to the rest of the citizens that we have the power and that we can make Congress do what they need to do?
I'm biased, right? Because I've got a, greater than 20-year history of advocating for the veterans, and I'm a disabled veteran myself, so if I give you my perspective, my, unfiltered perspective, it's obviously going to come down on the side of the veterans. But I think that if one just takes an objective look at the kinds of actions that are occurring in the fabric of our society, right, in the fabric of our economy, and how those things impact the veteranpreneur's ability, I think you see a society that favors veterans, right? If you look at, everything that happened on the dismantling DEI side of the equation, as they moved 8As into a persona non grata space, and they moved small disadvantaged businesses into a persona non grata space, and they rewrote the FAR, right, and reimagined competition. The one community that they left undisturbed is the veteran community. They left the disabled veteran community undisturbed. So right now, in this melee of contracting, the disabled veterans are the least risk, highest and best used community, right? And that's just in the acquisition space. When we start talking about the social arenas, our veterans are coming to the assistance of communities that are being abandoned by our government. And so when you look at, this explosion of weather-related disasters that are occurring because Hurricane Alley shifted and didn't tell anybody, right? And the government was playing shenanigans with FEMA's budget, right? What you've got are Legion members, right? What you've got are retired service men and women that are coming together in those communities in organic units and in organic support systems to make sure that their communities recover from the things that the government, the federal government, is supposed to step in and do. And so what we have, right, is a nation of patriots, and a few of them made the ultimate decision to serve.
Now, the president is in China, or was in China, having talks with the president from China. He also brung some of the top CEOs, Elon Musk, Larry Fink, the CEO from NVIDIA. Do you think that conversation in regards to tariffs and, you know, China's relationship with Iran, what are your thoughts on that, him going and having that conversation with them instead of, you know, reporting to Congress like he's supposed to? What are your thoughts? Is that more of a high level strategic overview of trying to get things settled down?
Well, my position on this administration, I've been brutally clear on.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I discount this administration. I believe that we have an administration that's suffering from the Peter Principle. I have called for Congress to quarantine this bad actor so that we don't do any more harm. I promised that I would stop punching down on that administration because, you know, it's
Yeah.
it's revealing itself. And so I really don't want to give this administration any more attention, right? You know, this is just a distraction, right?
Okay.
It's all about optics, right? You know, the idea that we don't understand the unique relationship that we have with the Chinese people, right? We don't understand the unique relationship that came out of the 1970 Accord when Nixon and Kissinger and his group, you know, set the standard that suggested that China would be the man. If this administration wants to continue to play, you know, the age-old games of the Cold War, right? China is the boogeyman. You have to be afraid of them, right? If they want to continue to play those games, that's another reason why we need to take the steps necessary to replace them with leadership that's more representative of how we want to be governed, how we want to be represented on a world stage. And so right now, I mean, I am challenged when I see President Trump in front of a camera with a microphone. And I shouldn't feel that way about my president. I'm concerned about what's going to come out of his mouth that's going to embarrass this great nation. And I think that there are nations across the globe that are holding their breath, wondering if we, the people, are going to wake up and recognize that we're the wild cards in this whole equation, right? If we're going to wake up and recognize that we have a constitutional republic that is managed by a democratic form of selecting our leaders. And because we have a constitution that gives each individual citizen sovereign rights, one of those rights is to replace our elected leaders when they are offensive, when they are considered a potential threat, right, to the security of these United States. Well, NASA, I think that we have a threat, right? We have a threat when we have thousands of our men and women in harm's way sitting out in the Middle East, right? We have a threat when the economics of this nation are as out of balance as they are currently. We have a threat when some of our allies, some of our friends are starting to be concerned about food insecurity, right? When our friends are becoming concerned about energy insecurity because of an action that we allowed our executive branch to take. Folks, this is the time that we take our wild card out. You know, like in that game of spades, you know, for those of you who know that game, you take the wild card out, you put it on your head when you know you got the trump card. Right? We need to play the wild card, which is our ability to reach out and touch our elected officials and cause them to react in a way that's in the best interest of these United States.
Yes, sir. Indeed. Now, beating the drum on the economics component of it, we already know, we talked about it. We identified that there's over $300 trillion that was centralized just in this fiscal year. Now, how significant is that number to not just service disabled veterans, small business, but to the whole federal contracting landscape? Because to my understanding, everybody is feeling this pain point at this moment. And realistically, how much do we have left that's not in that's not in the threat of the centralization?
Well, this $318 trillion consolidation event that you're talking about is another example of the Peter Principle mismanagement that's coming out of this administration that's placing America in harm's way. Notwithstanding the fact that this level of centralization consolidates or bundles contracts in a way that it doesn't allow those or that contracting practice to adhere to the spirit, dare I say, the policy of the Small Business Act, which is to use small businesses to the maximum extent practicable for national security reasons, right? We learned some years ago that having a robust small business base helped with the security, right? It helped us during times of mobilization, not having these war profiteers with one belly button to push. And so this kind of action that, instantly centralizes that large amount of business is suspect, in my opinion, right? Because it violates fair competition laws and rules just to do it. And then secondly, the outcome makes it easier for collusion. It makes it easier for fraud, right? Because you've got entities and organizations that you have created, you have made winners and losers that are not just too big to fail, they're too big to manage. So we've been down this path before, and we've got an administration that is doing things on a local economic level, right? That is highly suspect. It's highly questionable because it makes America less stable, right? From an economy perspective, right? When we have the lack of confidence about whether or not you're going to have a job tomorrow, right? We have entire sectors that are being disrupted while you empower other sectors that may not last. Those kinds of disruptions, they put America on a less safe footing. And one has to wonder, if you take these actions, in their independent condition, it doesn't tell a story. But when you start taking these actions in concert, right? The Strait of Hormuz, $6 gas prices. When you start taking all these things in concert, you start asking yourself the question, right? Is the enemy? Is the enemy attacking us from within? These are questions that we need to answer, but right now we don't have the luxury of time because we have men in harm's way that could blow up into a kinetic event that is just another quagmire, right? We have a leader on a world stage that is embarrassing us, right? And we have some economic decisions that have been made that have made our economy more fragile, that has made America less safe. We absolutely positively need to, between now and November of this year, stop, drop, and roll, and make sure that our voice is heard.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. And ultimately, we have the power and the ability to change the trajectory of all these pain points.
We've always had the power. That's why I like to use that Dorothy analogy, right? Mm-hmm. The Wizard of Oz. There's a lot of, there's a lot of hidden messages in that movie, but one is a very, very real statement, and that is you literally, not figuratively, you literally have always had the power. You literally are the author of a story that you're telling yourself. And if you don't like the story, You don't like the outcome. You can tell yourself a better story. You can put yourself in a position where you are having better believable dreams. And we're asking you to join us in proving to yourself that our constitutional republic is still the best form of government in the world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And guys, please, we ask that you reach out to your Congress and ask that they co-sponsor the two bills that we would like to show as a demonstration of our power, which is the Contract Our Veterans Act and the Veteran Member Business Loan Act. And also, guys, as we stated earlier on, for the people who did get their congressmen to co-sponsor these bills, that we have an incentive where they could participate fully for free in the cotton method, which is responsible for over 150 billion in federal contracting. So, guys, easy. Ask your Congress to co-sponsor the bill. Show us a receipt that you reached out to them when you did it, and you have access to generational wealth.
Can I interject something there? Because, you know, we had an event that happened 2 days ago. One of the members of the House, Representative Nydia Velasquez, is driving a legislation to ratify the rule of two. I think it's HR 2804.
Yep.
Yeah, it's HR 2804. And I would encourage you all to support that legislation. The Elite Service Disabled Veteran Network is endorsing that piece of legislation. We got an email requesting our support on that one 2 days ago. So that lets us know that the people are listening. And we are delivering a co-sponsor support, a co-sponsor request that you all go out and support HR 2804, which is a bill that's designed to ratify the rule of two. The rule of two survived the far rewrite, and it is an aspirational policy. What this particular bill does is it ratifies it in statute. And as you know, statute trumps, no pun intended, policy every day of the week.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And guys, join us the same place, same time tomorrow for the Veteran Powwow, where we're going to dive in deeper to the rule of two and why that's significant being signed in statute. On that note, guys, I am Ratwan Hill, and that is the Mr. Walter Cotton III. Until next time, guys.